Chapter 5, we combine together a variety of grammatical topics, so if you want to fast forward just to the commands part, it'll be later on in the video, but we're going to cover superlatives, positive and negative words, and then ultimately formal commands and negative commands. Beginning with superlatives, basically, to add emphasis to some adjectives, you can attach the ending isimo, or isima, isimos, isimas, to the adjective in order to emphasize that it's very whatever. So in English, it's like adding the word very. So for example, if the word bueno means good, buenísimo means very good. If the adjective ends in a vowel, drop the vowel before adding that ending. So if you have bello, you want to get rid of that O, and then you want to tack on bellissimo. And the emphasis and accent is on that middle syllable, bellissimo. Kargar zars, just like they changed in the preterite tense, that same style and same pattern is going to come back with these type of verbs. So adjectives with CG or Z need to change. So rico becomes riquísimo with a QU. Largo becomes larguísimo with a GU. And feliz becomes felicísimo with a C. So anytime you would change a Kargar zar in the preterite tense, you're going to do the same to the superlative if you'd like to use it. And as always, your adjectives must agree in gender and number. Some examples that you see: la sopa está buenísima. Notice that it agrees with la sopa, feminine and singular. Las palomitas están saladísimas, very salty. Fresquísimos, very fresh. Picantísima, very spicy. Sabrosísimas, very tasty. Moving on to positive and negative words, we'll see what those mean in just a second here. The positive words that we're going to be working with are algo, alguien, alguno, o, and siempre and también. What those mean is something, someone, some, or, always, or also. And you're going to see why those are positive once you compare those to their negative words. The opposite of something is nothing. Opposite of someone is no one. The opposite of some is no or not one. So in a sentence, that would be some students or no students or not one student. Or is going to be neither or nor. So I like this or that, or I don't like this nor that. Opposite of always, of course, is never. And the opposite of also is going to be neither. So I like that also, or I don't like that either, or neither. So our words are algo, alguien, algo, alguno, or alguna. If it's before a singular masculine noun, you're just going to use algún. O, siempre, también, nada, nadie, ninguno. Same rules apply there. Ni, nunca, and tampoco. In English, we use positive words with negative words. So for example, we have the negative word don't, where it implies negative, but then we have the positive word anything. In Spanish, you need to use a double negative. So you really need to say, I don't want nothing. And it sounds weird, and it is a double negative in English, but it makes total sense in Spanish. They will say something like, no quiero nada, where the word no is negative and the word nada is negative. A double negative makes sense though. So I don't want anything, no quiero nada. Double negative, no, nada. I don't ever study. Nunca estudio. No hay nadie. No and nadie, both negative words. Don't forget the a personal if you are using it before the word alguien or nadie, because remember, if we think about the a personal, whenever you are talking about a human being, you're going to put it before. So somebody and no one are both people inherently. So do you know anyone? ¿Conoces a alguien? You can't just say conoces a alguien. And no conozco a nadie. Notice the double negative. No conozco a nadie and the personal a. Before we dive into the commands portion of this, you're going to see why in a little bit, but it's necessary to go over irregular verbs in the yo form of the present tense. You can see here, I'll throw up the yo forms of those verbs and the nosotros forms of those verbs so you can see how they change in the yo form. A lot of yo-go verbs: hago, pongo, salgo, traigo, digo, vengo, as well as others: tengo, conozco, doy, sé, veo. And refreshing your memory on those is going to become very important once we start talking about commands again. To review really quickly, if we're going to form a to command, basically you are telling one person, your friend, to do something. You just use the LAU stead form, compra, come. We're careful of our boot verbs, prueba, ODUE stem change. And we have our irregulars, vendi, sal, azten, ve, ponce. And we remember our good biddy Vin Diesel and how many weapons he has. So those are our regular to commands. There are affirmative to commands, our positive to commands. But now we have to talk about negative to commands. Like, instead of telling you to do something, we can tell people not to do something. The formula, in order to form a negative to command, you want to use the yo form of the present tense indicative verb with the opposite to form ending. Think of the jingle: start with yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending. For example, if we wanted to know what an opposite ending is, if we think about our present tense indicative verbs o, as, a, amos, ais, an, o, es, a, amos, ace, and n, we know that AR verbs are on the left, but we are going to use those endings for ER, IR verbs, specifically the to form because we're talking about to commands, and for AR verbs we're going to use the ER, IR to form ending, which is going to be ace. So you can see how they crisscross, where ER, IR verbs use as and AR verbs use ace. So what is that going to look like? Instead of saying compra, which means buy, if we want to tell somebody to not buy, you say no compres, where you can see the end of comprar now has an ER ending, and you see the compres. Comer is come, is eat. No comas, you see an AR ending on an ER verb, is going to be don't eat. Notice we're going to start with yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending. Technically for our top two, if you start with the o, it's just going to be compro, and we drop the o and it becomes compres. But if you think for hacer and tener, the yo form is hago and tengo. So we start with yo, hago, drop the o, and the opposite ending becomes hagas. Remember, to tell somebody to do something, you're going to say haz, it's irregular. And if you want to tell somebody to not do something, you'd say no hagas. Ten is have as a positive command. No tengas is don't have. So ten miedo would be have fear or be afraid. No tengas miedo means don't be afraid or don't have fear. Cargarzars are also going to come into play with our negative commands. They are going to change as well. The spelling change that happens in the yo form preterite tense of the indicative for buscar and all cargarzars is going to happen as well. The C changes to a QU, the G changes to a GU, and the Z changes to a C. Notice, cargarzars are all AR verbs, so you're going to see ES or ACE at the end of them. No busques, no pagues, no empieces. So busca, no busques. Paga, no pagues. Empieza, no empieces. Would be look, don't look for, pay, don't pay for, and start and don't start. And again, you're also going to have stem changers in the yo form. So there's a lot to think about. You have to start with the yo form, drop the o, add your opposite ending, and then also look out for cargarzars. A lot of rules to follow. There are irregulars for our negative to commands. For dar, starting with yo and dropping the o doesn't exactly work. Same thing with a star, you can't drop the o from doy or estoy. So our irregulars are going to be no des, no vayas, no seas, no hayas for a verb haber, which won't play into what we'll use right now, but it becomes important later on in Spanish 3. No estés, with an accent, and no sepas. You can see that all of these verbs have an irregular yo form that can't be start with yo, drop the o. Doy, voy, soy, estoy, and say, you cannot drop the o, so that's why they're going to carry an irregular -2 command. So da no des, ve no vayas, se no seas, está no estés, and sabe and no sepas. Again, we're going to skip haber. Grammatically speaking, it technically would form that way. However, that's going to be a rule that we're going to cover next year. Some examples that you'll see. You have mezcla, no mezcles, mix, don't mix, serve, don't serve. Notice the stem change, e to I, sirve. Start with yo, drop the o, sirvo becomes sirv, and our opposite ending for an AR verb is as, no sirvas, sirve, no sirvas. Calienta, no calientes. E to IE stem change. We see it's an AR verb, so the LEO instead form is calienta, but then our opposite es at the end of calientes is for ER-IR verbs. Añade, no añadas. Hierve, stem change, no hiervas. Boil, don't boil. Pon, no pongas. Put, don't put. Irregular to command in the positive form, and start with yo, drop the o, opposite ending, no pongas in the negative. Eat dinner, don't eat dinner. Cena, no cenes. And then finally, ten, no tengas. Again, these are all to commands. Positive on the left, negative on the right. Ve, no vayas. Go, don't go. If those were to commands, we also want to sometimes be able to tell people respectfully to do something or to not do something. They follow, thankfully, almost the same rules as -2 commands. So if you were telling somebody close to you to do something, you'd use 2 commands, positive or negative, which we've just covered. But if you were telling somebody respectfully to do something, maybe somebody you don't know well, somebody older than you, anytime you'd use usted, that's going to be a formal 2 command, or I'm sorry, just a formal command. We're going to, again, start with yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending. So if we wanted to take the word comprar and we wanted to tell somebody you'd refer to as usted to buy something, we're going to say compre, where you can see the ending of compre is the e, the opposite ending of an AR verb, and in the usted form. Coma, ponga, and pruebe. Opposite ending a for an ER verb, opposite ending e for an AR verb. And again, we're starting with yo, so ponga starts with yo, pongo, drops the o, and the opposite ending of an ER verb is an a. You can see how they relate to the -2 commands, where basically it is a -2 command without the s. Again, our irregulars are going to come back, same way as they did before. Here you can see haber is not included in the list because you can't use haber as a command, but it still technically would be irregular if it were able to be used. Again, you're going to see that it's just going to be the same except without the s. One thing to note is that dar now carries an accent, and the reason it now carries an accent as opposed to des is because you need to put an accent to distinguish it from the preposition of or from, like yo soy de Illinois. De with an accent means that we can tell that it's a command. Cargars are going to have the same thing, basically as we learned before, busque, pague, and piese. Again, even though they're exclamation points, you're not yelling at somebody to do something. If I wanted to tell somebody, hey, can you look for that for me? You'd say busque, pague, and piese. So it's not always shouting. Usted commands could be used. A lot of times you will hear them used in recipes or in literature, just because they are trying to be formal or polite. What you do hear more often than not are ustedes commands, because ustedes commands, while they do have formality in Spain, the ustedes form is used in the Western Hemisphere, and you'll notice that some of these are very, very familiar. We're going to use the yo form again and the opposite ending except in the ustedes form. So comprar is going to have an opposite n ending, en. So compren would be an ustedes command. Coman would be eat if I was telling a group of people to eat or a group of people to buy. Compren, coman. Pongan, which would be one of the first ones that you might recognize. If I've ever told all of you to put anything away, you might have heard pongan todos los materiales al suelo. Put everything on the ground. And that's me talking to the whole group. Prueben is to try. ODUE stem change and opposite ending. And again, our irregulars are going to come back, except now they're just going to have ends on the back. You can see that den goes back to dropping its accent. Kargarzars are going to happen again. Busken, pagen. You might have heard busken, as in when I said look for a partner, I want you all to look for a partner. Busken a un compañero. Or saken is going to be another example, where we have sakar, or start with yo, drop the o, opposite ending, and it's going to have a Kargarzar stem change. So saken, Q-U-E-N. Pagen is you all pay. And piesen is start. And of course, we're being aware of that stem change in empezar. For formal commands, positive and negative commands follow the same rules. If you would like to make a formal command negative, you just add no. So for example, if I wanted to tell you all to take out your books, I'd say saquen los libros. If I wanted to tell you all to not take out your books, I'd just say no saquen los libros. You do not have to do anything different. This is different than two commands. Remember, positive two commands are the LAU usted form. Negative two commands are start with yo, drop the o, add the opposite two form ending. With formal commands, you just put a no in front of it and it automatically just becomes negative. We're going to see a lot of examples of this working through your packet. I'll put them up for you. So limpiar, if you were telling somebody to formally do it, limpie or limpien. Sirva, sirvan, E to I stem change. Ayude or ayuden. No poner would be no ponga or no pongan. Notice how it's no poner, meaning it's going to be a negative command. Ir, vaya or vayan. Sirva or sirvan. No haga, no hagan. Busque or busquen. Fría or frían. If I wanted to tell you somebody politely to be quiet, esté callado. If I wanted to tell you all to be quiet, estén callados. Don't feed the dog, or don't give the dog food. No de la comida, no den la comida. Sepa, sepan. Vaya, vayan. Pronouns are going to come back if we remember way back from first semester when we talked about what we should do with direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns, and reflexive pronouns. And what we did before is we'd always say put them in front of the verbs. For commands, there are a finite set of rules that you need to follow. The placement of pronouns depends on whether a command is positive or negative, affirmative or negative. Affirmative commands attach. Think affirmative attach, A and A, affirmative attach. I mean, if you are saying something positive, you are telling people or one person to do something, you need to, and there is a pronoun, you need to attach it to the end of the verb. For example, if you were telling someone to politely bring us, you would say llévenos, where you have the opposite ending, E and llevar. The nos is referring to us as a direct object, and now we're going to use accents, and we'll talk about what those mean in just a second. Pongan las, that would mean put them, where las is a direct object pronoun attached to the command. Cómprela, attached to the command because we're telling somebody to buy it, where it is la and it refers to something feminine and singular. Note, when the pronoun is attached to the affirmative command of two or more syllables, the stressed vowel carries an accent. The safest way to say that is you count 3 syllables back and put it on the strong vowel. Most of the time you can count 3 vowels back. you can see that it's llévenos, pónganlos, and cómprela, where it's mostly put on the third to last syllable. The accent is absolutely necessary, and you must always attach these pronouns. You do not have the option anymore of putting them out front. For negative commands, affirmative commands we attach, negative ones we have to put before the verb and after the word no. So if I wanted to say, don't sell her this shirt, no le venda. We can see the irregular form of vender using an AR ending and venda, and the le is referring to him or her. It comes before the verb and after the no. No lo prueban. Don't try it. The lo comes in between the no and the prueban. No me digas. We have a yo form digo, drop the o. Opposite ending for an IR verb is going to be as, so no digas. No me digas is don't tell me. So in summary, just showing you a lot of examples through your packet. Levántate, something you might hear in class all the time when I tell you to stand up. In the to form, notice that we're going back to the to form. It's just the LAU that form levanta. It is reflexive, levantarse. So the se changes to a te. We attach it to levanta to make levantate, and we count 3 syllables back and put an accent on the a. Don't get up. Now we start with yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending for a negative to command. So no levantes, but again the verb is reflexive, levantarse, so we need the reflexive pronoun in between the no and the levantes because it's negative. So positive levantate is attached, negative not attached in between. Levantese is get up if you were telling somebody formally to get up, or the most common one that you might hear, levántense, which is telling you all to get up. Notice, opposite ending, it's an AR verb, but it has levanten, an en ending. It's a positive command, so we're attaching that se, and we're counting 3 syllables back to add the accent. So if you've ever wondered why levántense is the way that it is, this is why. And then of course, the negative ways to say get up or don't get up, no se levante and no se levanten, where the pronoun now comes before and we don't have to worry about accents. Arréglate, no te arregles. Arréglese, no se arregle. Notice that the positive to command has the LA usted form. The bottom 3, which is the negative to, positive usted, negative usted, all follow the start with yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending, and then the pronoun is either attached if it's positive or in between the no and the verb if it's negative. If they were ustedes commands, it's basically the same thing as the usted commands, except now we just add an n. Arréglense would be telling a group of people to get ready.